Hey everybody, I'm Two Tone.
And I'm Mitch the Peach.
Welcome back to the Hills Are Silent podcast, where we chop it up about the games of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Let's get into it. What's going on, Mitch?
Oh man, still doing lots of gaming. I haven't hit the a time in my life where I'm super busy, so it's I've been knocking out more games, and I played some good ones, and one in particular that I'm really gonna try and sell you because I want you to play it.
Okay.
So my first one is called Signalis. I know we've kind of talked about it a little bit prior to this, but it's a classic survival horror experience. It's very, very, very similar to Resident Evil.
Okay.
And when I say that, it's the solving puzzles, it's killing or avoiding nightmarish creatures, zombie type things, limited inventory slots, safe rooms, all that stuff that really is, the Resident Evil style of things.
Nice.
It's developed by the best thing. I beat the game and I see the credits and I'm expecting, a ton of names in the credits and how it goes. It lasts for a super long time. No, there are two people who developed this game. The whole studio is two people.
Whoa.
Called Rose Engine Studio. I want to give them a shout out.
Wow.
Yeah, two-person German studio. Which I saw that and I was in awe. I was like, okay, because it's a very impressive game, and for two people to only work on it, that's awesome. Because their names were next to everything that the game, basically everything except for the music that was done on it. So every line it said the same two names throughout the whole credits.
I wonder what engine they made that in. You think it's an Unreal Engine game?
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't look that up, but I definitely want to check that out. Because it's impressive. I wonder how long it took them too.
Yeah. How long did it take you to beat the game?
Fairly short. I'd say probably 8 to 10 hours.
Okay, that's not bad.
I mean, it was perfect amount for a campaign. I mean, I like those short campaigns that are just 8 to 10 hours and I'm through.
Yeah, same here. So you were telling me that you streamed recently for 6 hours. Was it that game?
It was not that game, but I did stream that game for a time. I think I got halfway through, and then I kind of switched games because I beat it on my own because I really wanted to keep playing it, but I didn't want to wait and do it on stream.
Okay.
I actually played House of Ashes, the not to get too off script, House of Ashes, the Dark Pictures Anthology. There's 4 of those games now, and they're all kind of like that choose your own adventure style of can you make it out alive with every character that they have kind of thing.
So the House of Ashes, which one is that in the series?
That's the one. It's the third one in the series.
Okay.
It's where they go to. It's these army patrol men that are going to Iraq, and they fall through some sort of sinkhole, and they end up in this Egyptian sort of area where they run into all these vampire bat zombie things. It sounds ridiculous, and that's literally what it is.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, I've been meaning to check those out. So were you playing those on Game Pass, or did you buy them on Steam, or
No, I bought them all actually, yeah. But they've dropped in price quite a bit recently. I mean, I usually wait on them, and you can get them for $15 to $20, maybe a little less.
Wait, what console did you buy them on?
I bought them on Xbox.
Okay. Dang.
I wanted the achievements.
So, I've been eyeballing that series for a while, and like you said, they've been dropping in price recently. I just picked up the first one and the third one, which I think you said is the House of Ashes one.
Yes.
But I picked them up for PlayStation 4.
Okay. Yeah. The second one is by far the worst in the series. I've played 3 of the 4 now. And if you skipped 2, you'd be totally fine.
Really? It's not even worth bothering playing?
Nope. Not worth bothering. No.
Wow.
It was fun on stream because I could interact with my viewers and whatnot. And it's always fun when you're doing those choose your own adventure where people in your chat are telling you if you should do this or, if you should run or hide or whatever. But playing on my own, I wouldn't have done it.
Okay. Yeah, because the second one, for some reason, on PlayStation 4 is the most expensive right now. So I was holding off on picking it up, but if it's not even worth picking up, then I won't.
No, I would save and wait for the fourth one just came out called The
Yeah.
Devil in Me, and that
saw
one's
that.
actually based off of a Chicago serial killer
Oh, okay.
during the World Fair, and he has his own like trap house, kind of like Saw, like the Saw series. He has his own trap house, and there's people that get stuck in his house and they have to escape.
So they're all co-op, right? You can play them all online with other people.
You can't play them all online with other people. I did them all solo myself,
Okay.
and it's kind of weird when you do it solo because you can tell exactly when you change characters where it's like, oh, that should be two second player, but they're just making it be me again. They kind of make it a little obvious.
So if you were playing in co-op, would you just not see those scenarios as the second person? Like, are you missing out?
I don't think you miss out. I think it just cuts over to the second person, and then it's like, oh, you're in control now. I think you still see the whole thing.
Okay. Oh, so you guys aren't playing at the exact same time. It's literally switching off. Is that how it
You're
is?
right. Yeah, you're watching the whole thing, but you're not always in control. I think some people are in control of different characters at different times
Okay. Weird.
because
That's-
they always cut to different characters because they usually get split up at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know how they determine that though.
that's an interesting approach to co-op because I was reading up on the games before I bought them, and it was saying you could play up to 5 players locally. So I'm like, what does that mean? So I was reading the description, and it basically is like every time it switches characters, you're supposed to just hand your controller to the next person in the room. So nobody's ever actually playing at the same time. You're just passing the controller for the different scenarios. So
That's why I'm totally fine playing those on my own because I don't feel like there's really much to gain from playing them in co-op.
yeah, that's good to know because I originally was going to be like we should run through them all in co-op if you don't mind playing them again. But if it's not us actually playing together like at the same time, then it may not
No.
actually be worth it. Huh.
Nope, unfortunately not. It's just one big story, and they're like, okay, you can control the character at this moment, and you can control the character at that moment.
Yeah. So
But
what?
sometimes there's like sequences where like both characters, there's like multiple people like running and doing something at the same time, and then they'll like quickly pan to like back and forth. So sometimes I guess there's a little bit of gameplay at the same time.
So what was so bad about the second one?
I don't want to spoil the ending in case you do end up playing it, but the ending and how they tried to tie it all together just made me so furious that I just did not want to go back into it.
So it's bad story had a lot to do with it. Then is that what you're getting at?
Bad story, yeah. I mean, all those games are never like, I don't know, the writing is never like the best. Like on any of those Dark Pictures, it's more like just the concepts are fun, and you kind of just like root for some of the characters within it while you're playing. There's also a couple of mechanics like in the second one that they don't have in the other ones of where like every time you make a choice, your I don't know, your ambition could go up, or your how afraid you are could go up, or your relationships between characters can go up or down. And if you didn't have it at a certain bar, by the end, characters would automatically die, and you couldn't you couldn't do anything about it because you didn't make dialogue choices along the way that got their like, I don't know, their anger at a certain at a certain height, or like their ambition at a certain height, which I guess is like, I guess it makes sense when it's like a choose your own, you know, dialogue and adventure, but it seemed kind of unfair by the end.
Yeah. Is the Quarry, is that made by the same development team?
That's a good question. I'm not sure because Supermassive does some of them.
Let's see. Quarry. Director. Developer, Supermassive Games.
Look up the Dark Pictures. I'm not sure if that's Supermassive as well.
Yeah, it is. It says
It is?
yeah,
Okay.
they made all the Dark Pictures, and then they released the Quarry too.
Yeah,
Damn, they
and the
stay
Quarry is
busy.
like they do. They have 4 of those Dark Pictures games, and then they have the Quarry.
Yeah. Did you play the Quarry?
I own it. It's next on my list, I think, to stream. I'm gonna go into that one.
Okay. I
I've
wonder.
heard that one's a little longer than the Dark Pictures, and it's pretty good.
Okay. So have you played it at all yet?
Nope, haven't touched it.
Okay.
That's one we could maybe do together.
What do you have it on Xbox?
I do, yeah.
I gotta get an Xbox,
Eventually.
man. Yeah. I wonder if the co-op's the same way where you're not like both actually on scene at the same time, playing at the same time. I don't know. I'll dig
I think
into
it
that.
probably is a lot of time with those type of games. That's kind of how they roll, but
Yeah.
maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, look at that one. Cool, man. Well, I
But
definitely want to check out those Dark Picture ones I just got.
they're fun. They're they're short games. I mean, they're really chill. Like just chill on your couch or chill on your computer chair and just play them through, and you don't have to think too much, And the stories are good. They take interesting turns. The dialogue's a little cheesy, but I think they're fun and worth playing.
Cool.
But I want to go back to Signalis though, because that's the one where I'm trying to sell you on this one because I want you to play it. So the graphics, I was looking at like what they deem the graphics are for Signalis, and they call it a 2.5D perspective. Have you ever heard of 2.5D? So it's not 2D and it's not 3D.
Yeah, usually I'm looking at the screenshots now, and usually when I think 2.5D, I think of a game that's actually made in a 3D engine, but you're only able to go left or right. So like maybe like Mortal Kombat, like the recent Mortal Kombat games or something, like that would consider that 2.5D, where
Okay.
you're restricted in your movement. The Signalis, it looks more like I would call this like an isometric view, but I'm just looking at still screenshots.
Right. But it has that I guess the HD 2D look to it that I guess I've been playing those type of games a lot lately, and I've really liked that they've kind of revived that 2D aspect in newer age games and made them look really pretty. And I don't know, I think the game was a lot of fun. So the storyline is you play as what they call a replica known as Elster. And the replicas are androids made with they have like copied human neural implants that they essentially use these androids for military and labor force. This nation that is at war with another nation. The consequence for these humans using these, or I guess implanting these neural implants with these replicas, is they have human desires like listening to music, falling in love, or wanting to bathe and things like that. Which brings me to what the goal is and why you're controlling Elster and what she's trying to do. Basically, she's trying to find this android partner that she worked with on this spaceship, and she wakes up from this long slumber and she realizes that majority of the staff is dead on this spaceship, and many of them are now hostile. So that's where it comes in, where basically you have the limited inventory, you're solving puzzles, and you're trying to defend yourself against these now rogue android nightmarish looking creatures. So I did a lot of reading on the story because I'm going to admit when I played through it, I didn't know what the heck was going on a lot of the time. When I read it, it kind of made sense now, but going into it completely blind, they didn't have a lot of dialogue, so I didn't really know what was going on. But the gameplay wise, fantastic. Really reminded me of Resident Evil, like I said. Ton of fun. Short, 8 to 10 hours. It was definitely worth the playthrough, and it was on Game Pass.
Nice. I'm looking at the videos now and actually seeing the graphics in motion. It has almost like a old school like pre-rendered graphics look to it. Like if you're going to play like an old MS-DOS game and they switch to a cutscene where it's pre-rendered, that's kind of what it reminds me of. Which I always thought that old 3D pre-rendered look was always so creepy to me. It just had this weird surrealness to it. Yeah, this was
me
cool,
playing that game like late at night, just on my couch hanging out. Like when I wasn't streaming it. Like it was super just eerie, and like they really made it a creepy atmosphere, especially with like the cutscenes where honestly I didn't know what was going on, but they were still so intriguing to me because they were just very like out there and different. Yeah, but really enjoyed it.
Nice.
But yeah, that is Signalis. Again, yeah, it's on Game Pass for PC. So even though you don't have an Xbox mic, you can still play it.
Yeah, I'm gonna check this one out.
Aside from that, though, I have one other game I want to talk about, and
Okay.
this one, I don't know if you'd be into it, but it's a type of game that's super up my alley. It's called Triangle Strategy, and Triangle Strategy is a turn-based role-playing game, which is super similar to Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy Tactics. Essentially, it's the type of game where you're taking turns, moving characters from your party, commanding them to attack or defend. And, you only have... Your enemies also have one turn. You basically go back and forth with characters on your team and then the enemies that you're facing. And then once you're out of battle, you're using the resources that you gain from battle to upgrade your party and, give them more attack or, magic damage or swap weapons, swap armor and whatnot. So basically trying to power you up for the next fight that you eventually run into. And then your party consists of a bunch of different, I guess, types of roles. So it's like there's archers, there's swordsmen, there's horse riders, there's mages, and they all kind of like work together in this pretty massive story throughout the entire game. And I want to bring up again who it's developed by. So it's developed by Tomoyama Asano, who developed Octopath Traveler, if you're familiar with that game. Mm-hmm. Again, it's going to go back to, I guess I have a theme this week. It's their graphics are HD 2D is what they call them. And I think they look beautiful, but it reminds me so much of Octopath Traveler. So when I was looking up who was developing it, I was like, okay, that makes complete sense because Octopath's honestly one of my favorite games I played last year, and it looks very similar, but very good.
Wow. Yeah. And looks like it's published by Square Enix. I'm surprised I didn't hear about this game.
It's actually up for the Game Awards, which are happening right now. It's up for one of the nominees. I'm not sure which one, but it did get a lot of good praise. Yeah. So the storyline, which I think it's the best part of the game. Like I love the turn-based gameplay. I love the Fire Emblem games, so I knew I would like that part. But the story is kind of what got me. It's very much like Game of Thrones, which I mean, as a huge Game of Thrones fan, I was like, this is awesome. So there's 3 nations that are battling for control of resources. The main resources in this game were salt and iron. And you control many characters because it's obviously a turn base and you have a whole party. But the main character is this lord called Serenoa. He's the heir to one of the most prominent houses of one of the 3 nations that are fighting for these resources. And then through his leadership and then working with the party that he has, they have to make decisions throughout the game to navigate conflict and ultimately decide what ending you get in the game. So they always have during the story, they'll always pause and there'll be times where it's like, okay, let's get the party together and let's make a choice. You need to convince your party which choice is the best choice to move on. So essentially the game, you could play the game multiple times and you could get different gameplay throughout because you could make one choice and go one route and then you can make another choice and go a completely different route. And with that being said, and the part that made me incredibly angry, because I only play games one time, they have something called the golden ending. And if you make all the correct choices or what they deem the right choice for everyone, you get the golden ending. And I did not get that because I didn't realize there was a golden ending until I was already too far along. And then I realized that I had made every right choice but one specific part, which meant that I was never going to get the golden ending.
Yeah, sometimes games with multiple endings, especially like you said, when they have one ending that's supposed to be the correct ending, those get on my nerves.
Yeah, it's especially because it was a very minor thing that I did to make it so I could never get it, and I was too far along after that for me to want to go back and redo what I did. So I was like, okay, well, the ending that I got was still satisfying though, so at least there was that.
Yeah, with this being a turn-based RPG, how long is it?
Very long. Yes, I think I like the Switch like tells me how many hours that I have on games as
That's
I'm
cool.
playing them. I can go out into my little dashboard and look. I would say that I am at probably 40 to 50 hours. I think probably around 50 hours to beat it.
Wow.
It was a lot of just me, a lot of late night, Mitch in bed, can't sleep, just playing a Switch.
Yeah. Yeah, this one looks cool.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a commitment, but those are like probably my bread and butter of the games that I love. I'm a big Fire Emblem fan, so yeah, it was great, and the story just got me throughout the whole thing too. So that was an added plus.
Oh, I didn't know you played the Fire Emblem games.
Yeah, I've played Three Houses, the one on Switch, and man, that one I burned through that one. So good.
Man, there's a lot of those games. Those go all the way back to 1990. Wow.
Yeah, I'd like to go back and play some of those. I feel like I've only played more of the somewhat recent. I think I started on GameCube, and then I played majority of them on like 3DS, DS, and then now the Switch.
Yeah, I knew they were on a lot of the handhelds. Which one's the GameCube one?
Oh my gosh, I can't even think. I know there's one on GameCube though, and I can't think of the name of it.
Game Boy. There's a bunch of Game Boy Advance ones.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? Oh, Path of Radiance.
Yes.
Okay. Wow, that's a throwback right there.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I wonder how much that goes for these days.
Oh, I'm sure those Fire Emblem games, they're definitely collector games for sure.
Yeah, it's Path of Radiance, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. So GameCube games are really expensive now, and you mix that with it being a JRPG. Those are the two recipes for an expensive old game. Whoa!
Exactly.
For just the disc, the average price is $180. For the whole thing with the case and manual, the average price is $250.
Holy crap. I'm not surprised though.
That one's pretty sought after. Cool.
Yeah. But yeah, those are what I've been playing. I've been excited to talk about both of those, especially Triangle Strategy as well, because it took me so long to even beat it, so I had to at least talk about it.
Yeah, that was an epic journey.
Definitely. But what's Mike been playing lately?
And I've been playing one game lately. It's called Omega Boost, and it came out on the original PlayStation. I got it right here with me, so you can take a look at it.
Nice. Look at that art.
Yeah, pretty funky looking robot mech game. So it's made by the same development team that makes all of the Gran Turismo games.
Oh wow.
Apparently they took a small break in between making those games and developed this one. So this is the only, as far as I know, this is the only non-racing game that development studio has made.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And it came out right towards the end of the PlayStation's life cycle. And because of that, and because it was developed by a team that had a lot of experience with the PlayStation hardware, it allegedly is the game with the best graphics for the PlayStation 1. And I can say, playing this, for a PS1 game, these graphics are really good. They got a lot of juice out of the PlayStation with this game. So it didn't sell well because it was released so late in the PlayStation life, which means it's kind of a hard game to come by. And I just happened to be checking the online store for one of the used video game stores that's nearby, and I saw it pop up. And since it's a lesser known game and it's not something that's really sought after, it actually was pretty cheap. I think I paid about $30 for it. So that's kind of what I go towards, what I'm collecting. Like, there's definitely these titles, like, for example, Path of Radiance, that everybody knows about. Everybody wants it. There's not a lot of copies out there because GameCube games did not really sell a lot. So the value is just up like crazy. There's plenty of games that I would love to buy, but they're just, I'm totally priced out. I'm just not going to pay that much for that game. It's not that serious. If I really want to play it, I'll just play it on an emulator. So what I like to do is find lesser known games that all the collectors aren't after, but are still good games. And I heard that this was a good game. So I went to that game store and picked up the copy, and I was talking to the guy that works there. And he was telling me, he's like, as many years as I've been here, I think this is the only time that this game has come through my store. So I'm like, all right, so that kind of tells me the rarity of this game.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him, and I was like, one of the other reasons I picked it up is because one of my favorite bands is the heavy metal band Static X. They were huge in the early 2000s. They have really good music, though. Even recently, they've released a good album. But their lead singer, rest in peace, Wayne Static, died some years back. So they still tour, they still make music, but it's with a different singer. But the theme song for this game is Static X. So I thought that was pretty cool. So being a game collector and somebody who has a lot of fandom, I guess to say, for Static X, I was like, this is definitely something for me to pick up. You can actually see right in the liner, they've got music by awesome. Static X. So yeah, I got home.
Awesome. The copy you picked up had the inserts in it too. That's pretty nice.
Yeah,
I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, man. When I collect, I try to go for the complete thing, case and manual and everything. Right. Don't always get it though. But yeah, so I was like, I'm eager to check this out. Popped it into my PlayStation 3 because that plays PS1 games. And yeah, it's awesome. It is a really good game. It's a rail shooter. Like, you're this mech robot, and you just go through these different stages. Each one is completely different. You have tons of firepower, and you're limited in your movement. The closest game I could compare it to would be something like Panzer Dragoon, if you've ever heard of that or ever played that game. That was a similar rail shooter that came out on Sega Saturn. But this, to me, is better than Panzer Dragoon. And that game was considered one of the best Sega Saturn games, at least as far as the ones that were released in North America. But it is a lot of fun. It is fast-paced. It is definitely skill-based. My only complaint is you have limited lives. And if you don't beat the game in those limited lives, you have to start all the way back at the beginning. And I hate when games do that. That's not so common anymore, but a lot of older games would just give you limited lives that you'd have to go through the whole game with. And especially on like original Nintendo or Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis, that wasn't very common on the PlayStation 1. So I'm surprised that this game works that way, especially since it was a later PS1 release. So I haven't beaten it yet. I keep getting farther and farther every time, but I'm just like, God, man, I don't want to sit here and play through the first 3, 4, 5 levels over and over and over again just to get a little bit farther, a little bit farther. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I recommend it to anybody out there, and this game is either going to slip away into obscurity or other people are going to catch on that this is a gem on the PlayStation, and it's probably going to jack up in price and collectability.
There you go. You're in before the masses, right?
Yeah. So I try to do, man. When everyone's yinging, I try to yang.
There you go. So many games during that era too. I mean, collecting is, there's a lot of hidden gems out there. It's easy to find them.
Yeah, and on PlayStation 1, speaking of JRPGs, those are usually the most expensive games as far as trying to rebuy them today.
Yeah, I think when we were at Mega Replay the last time, taking a look at some of those, I know the ones that they kept in the glass case were all the super rare RPGs that I can't think of the name of the series that you said. There was one with it had a ton of games in the series, and there were a bunch of JRPGs, and I can't think of it, but I'll think of it after the podcast, I'm sure. But yeah, I guess I totally understand those JRPGs. They're the collector's piece.
Yeah. So playing this PlayStation 1 game has gotten me real nostalgic for the PS1, and we're coming up to Christmas. Christmas is right around the corner. The PlayStation 1 was one of my best Christmas memories. I don't remember how old I was, maybe 9 or 10, and I was begging my parents for a PS1 or an N64. Probably both. I was probably asking for both because they both came out around the same time. And my parents were just like, nope, we're not getting it for you. We're not getting it for you. I was just like, dang, dude, that's all I want. There's nothing else I want. And I did end up getting a PlayStation for Christmas, and I ended up finding out about it accidentally on Christmas Eve. So it was the night before Christmas, and I went and knocked on my parents' door to their bedroom, but bursted in right after knocking. I was a rude child. And as soon as I did that, my parents were wrapping the Christmas presents, and I saw my dad looking at the PlayStation 1 box, and then he saw me, and he was like, oh, crap, and he just kind of huddled over it, and they're like, what do you want? Get out of here. So I left the room, shut the bedroom door. I'm like, yes, I'm getting a PlayStation 1. And my dad ended up doing a good job picking up some games for me. He got me the console. He got me Parappa the Rapper, which is a great, great game. He got me Jet Moto, which was a good racing game. Air Combat. And I think that was it. I think those are the 4 he got me. But all of those were solid games. And that was an amazing Christmas. And then that Christmas night, when we all went to Grandma Maxine's for the family dinner, I had brought my PlayStation over there and was playing it.
Yep, you were always the one to get me into, whatever the latest games were. You were always the one that I had to beg my dad for it after seeing you playing stuff. I was like, I gotta have that. Like, come on.
Yeah. So, but we've been talking about Christmas a couple of times in these podcast episodes. I remember you telling me that you'd gotten a new Xbox controller the day after your last one crapped out. Is there any other memorable Christmas that you had?
Yeah, that was memorable in the bad way, but we'll switch gears and to a good memory from Christmas. The Gears of War franchise, near and dear to my heart, even to this day. As a kid, Gears of War 1 was coming out. I don't even know how old we were then, but quite a few years ago at this point. But I remember I really wanted Gears of War because I knew my friend Tim was going to get Gears of War as well. And they had already stated that they're going to have a campaign co-op. And we're like, we're going to burn through this. And, right on Christmas, we're going to play. Well, Tim gets it on Christmas Eve. His family had a thing where he got the open presents early. He got it on Christmas Eve. And I'm like begging him. I'm like, dude, do not start it. Just wait for me. And thankfully he did. So Christmas morning, I open them up. I get the Gears of War. Tim is at church. He's like telling me, send me some voice message on Xbox 360. He's like, hey, you need to wait on me now. Like, we'll play when I get back. And so, just a really good memory of him getting back from church and us playing through the Gears of War 1 through the whole Christmas break until we finished it. And then burning in through that going into the multiplayer, which really was like the first experience with that multiplayer. I was hooked from the start.
So good. So I had beaten that on co-op multiple times, but I always did it through split screen. So you guys did it online?
We did online. Yes.
I guess I'd never realized that it had the online co-op in the first game. I thought it only had local co-op.
It had online because you could play as both. I remember like inviting him in, and then he would automatically be Dom.
Yeah.
And I was Mark's Phoenix. But yeah, I do remember that us playing it online.
Do you remember if it was just 2 players multiplayer, or could you play like a full squad of 4 online? Because I think you could
just
in
2
the later
players.
Games. Okay, yeah, I think
the later games there was. I think they did open it up for 4.
Okay.
But no, the first one was just 2.
Yeah, I wonder which game.
And the multiplayer was funky too because matchmaking wasn't a thing, like a standard thing for every single game. Halo 2 kind of started that as far as like the online matchmaking, inviting your friends, joining a party, and then getting in the game together. But Gears of War, you had to like join lobbies and just like keep joining lobbies to try and get all of your friends into the same lobby and get on the same side so you could play together.
Dang.
Yeah, there was no like queuing together. It was just like, all right, you're in this one? There's only like 2 of 8 people. Get in here. Like
oh man.
Yeah. Much simpler times now.
2-player console together, 4 players. Yeah, at least in Gears of War 3, up to 4 people could play the campaign and co-op. Man, that was awesome. Gears of War 3, man, that was such an amazing game. And being able to play that co-op with 4 people, and it has the really good multiplayer and the horde mode. Wow.
And then after that one, is that when they completely ruined it with Judgment?
Yeah. I remember buying Judgment only a few months after it came out, and I blew through the single player campaign. It was very forgettable, and when I tried to go online, there was 0 lobbies, and this was just a few months after the game had come out. I'm like, I know it's not the best game, but for a franchise as big as Gears of War, to hop in the multiplayer and there be 0 players a few months after release, that was crazy.
People were just like, forget this. We're just going to go back to the Gears of War 3 because it's just better.
Yeah, it really was. Judgment was just totally like a recycle of assets and everything. Speaking of Gears of War, though, so Cliff Bleszinski, I believe he was the creative director at Epic, and was like one of the leading forces behind Gears of War. Yeah. Basically, I guess it was his idea, and a lot of the game mechanics were his idea. He directed the first one, the second one, and the third one. I think he had a very small role in Judgment. And he's also done some other great games like Bulletstorm. I played through that back in the day. That was a great game. Before that, he worked on the Unreal Tournaments, which were amazing, amazing games in their own right.
Yeah, what was?
He just released a book, which is essentially his life story. He starts out from when he was a kid and getting into video games all the way up to starting to make games, getting a job at Epic, working on Unreal Tournament, working on Gears of War, and seeing that blow into this huge franchise. And then later on, he decided to leave Epic, and then he founded his own game studio where they released a game called Lawbreakers, which did not do well, but apparently it was a good game. It just didn't get the audience it needed to. So I blew through this book. It was really, really good. It was very interesting, well written, an incredible story. And then after I finished it, I tweeted out to Cliff Bleszinski and said, hey, the book was great. And this is the awesomeness of social media nowadays. That you can just reach out to somebody who makes whatever art you're consuming, whether it be a game or a book or a movie, and there's a chance they can reply. So he replied to my tweet, was like, thank you, man. Let other people know about the book. So I really appreciated that. But yeah, I recommend this to anybody that's curious about the history of Gears of War or Unreal Tournament, or just to hear what it's like to work in the game industry. And after listening to the chapters where he talked about Lawbreakers, I am actually really upset that I never played that game.
I'm trying to think if I did. I might have. It's just, it came and went so quickly that I can't remember if I did or not.
Yeah, that was.
And I'm trying to think what type of game it was. It was very much like a Unreal Tournament-esque, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the issue. It was a hero arena style shooter, and it was online only. And since it couldn't get the player base it needed, eventually the servers were shut down, so you can't even play this game anymore.
No, they actually, I don't know if you talked about that in your book, and you might need to look this up, or I might too, but I'm not sure it was after Lawbreakers or before, but he tried to create a battle royale.
Yeah, he did talk about that in the book as well.
And I did play that.
Really?
I did, and it was very rough. You could tell, because they even said it was this is very, very early access, and God, they were not kidding. It was bare bones almost. It had some cool concepts that I feel like even Fortnite might have took some of them at some point, but it was just so rough. I think they were just trying to rush it out at that point.
Yeah, he does discuss that in the book, and he basically explains it as being their last ditch effort to keep the lights on in the studio. And yeah, he said it did actually get a lot of traction, but they were getting hit hard by the hackers because they had no anti-cheat in place. And that just, what little traction it gained, the hackers just destroyed that.
Yeah, and because I saw, when I was playing it, popular streamers even were giving it a try, like the Tim the Tatmans and the Ninjas and whatnot. They were diving in and giving it a try. It was just so bare bones, and you could tell it was a last ditch effort when they were really just trying to throw something out there just to see if it would stick. But it's sad because it's another one just like Lawbreakers where it really, he knows what he's doing overall. I just think, I think marketing plays a huge role in games. I think, releasing stuff in the right timing is huge. It's not always about, if the game if it's a good game to some. I don't know if that's the correct way to phrase that, but my best example is look at a game like Among Us. That game was out for years, just sitting in the Steam marketplace, never being bought. And then some random streamer picked it up and started playing it, and now it's become one of the biggest sensations ever. But it had been the people that had created it had abandoned even updating it. They were done. And then once the streamer brought it in and then everybody started playing it, the small development team was like, crap, all right, we'll get back to it.
I did not know that. I didn't know that was the history of that game.
Yeah, so timing's huge. Or just an opportunity for exposure.
Yeah, you have to get the audience for a game for it to really take off. And you got to have the right team. Lawbreakers, it sounds like it was a good game, but in his book, he explains it that the other developers working on the game weren't necessarily into that type of game. A lot of them were mainly fans MOBAs and stuff. So even though they were all talented developers and designers, it sounds like they didn't quite have the passion for a shooter that someone like Cliff Bleszinski has. So also part of it was wrong team to be making that type of game, and not enough marketing, too much competition, because right around that time Overwatch came out and all these other big hitters.
Oh, wow, okay.
Interesting story.
Yeah, you talking about that makes me definitely want to dive in and read that. I'm not a huge reader, so maybe it'll be an audiobook, but
Yeah.
Regardless, I want to hear the story because I was a huge Gears of War fan, and I know a lot about Cliff through the years. Just, he was always making media appearances for things. So he was a very well-known, figure, and we always, you always connected him with Gears of War all the time. So, yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you shared that.
Yeah, another great book to check out along the same lines is Masters of Doom, and that's the story of id Software and all the games they created, because they were basically the originators of the first-person shooter. They made Wolfenstein, Doom, Quake, and they came up in the early 90s. They're kind of like the founding fathers of video games to an extent, or at least part of that. So that is a very, very interesting story as well.
Yeah, maybe that's why. Maybe I'll read more if I read more gaming literature.
Yeah. But yeah, those are the two I've read recently, and both are highly recommended.
Okay.
All right, man. We are well past the 45-minute mark, and I know we've got a lot of other stuff to talk about. Do you want to just save that for the next episode and wrap it up here?
Yeah, I think that's good. I think we talked about, a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for sticking around to the end. If you did, we got more to come. Plenty more stuff that we didn't cover in this episode that we're going to cover in the next episode, plus more beyond that. Mitch, do you want to let them know where we can be found on all the social medias?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find all our episodes on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and then you can follow us on our social media accounts. Our Twitter is @HillsAreSilent, Instagram /HillsAreSilent, and then our YouTube is @TheHillsAreSilent. If you have any questions or comments, you can also reach us in our email inbox. It's hillsaresilent@gmail.com. We'll catch you on the next episode.